and you're very welcome to another edition of the JMac Podcast. I'm John McMahon, and of course, guys, this podcast is sponsored by Orga Retrowear.com. Check the website out for all your retro gear needs and want. And today, guys, I'm joined by former Mayo and Wicklow footballer Austin O'Malley. So, Austin, how are you?
Good, John. Listen, thanks a million for having me on. Delighted to jump on and chat, I suppose, all things sport and performance. It's tricky out there at the moment, obviously. The landscape is, I suppose, we could say literally shifting beneath our feet. So I suppose massive kudos to all you guys that are doing podcasts. They've been a great reprieve to everybody, I think, across society. Almost a social crutch at the moment for getting people through these days and nights. So delighted to be here with you and looking forward to the next hour or so.
Yeah, not so bad. Thanks a million for coming on. And it's like anything else. I always start off, Austin. How have you found the last year? I know obviously we were saying off here you're very busy with your high performance work and everything goes along with it. But I suppose apart from that, Austin, like how have you found this COVID stuff? And I know in the news today they're giving a bit of a roadmap, but I think people are still a bit frustrated by the kind of results of it. But how have you found the last year and a bit, Austin?
Yeah, look, it's been really, really challenging. Like everybody else, I suppose I've been looking around corners, trying to make sense of everything. Literally, as I said there, I suppose at the outset, the ground is shifting beneath our feet every day, and it's a challenge to stay on point. I suppose the king and queen of everything that has been at the moment is sort of building solid routines and rituals to get ourselves through these days and nights and weeks and so on. But hopefully, there's light at the end of the tunnel. I think, I suppose, it's palpable out there at the moment. This third lockdown, you can definitely feel a little bit more weariness in people, and they really are looking for a significant signpost or a way out now, which will be gladly and greatly welcomed if government could come with it, or the powers that be at the moment. Just to, I suppose, humans by nature, we're precarious. We like to see an in point or an out game, and we're great when we have something to work towards. But I think the frustrations at the moment is just that lack of clarity. If we could get a little bit more, it would certainly raise the spirits and give people a little bit more hope,
Yeah, geez, I agree with all that. And I suppose, Austin, I'm kind of remarking on all of my podcasts, and like as you were kind of, as we all say, we have been locked away, Austin. There's been no pubs, restaurants, nightclubs, absolutely nothing. And well, me and you'd never go to nightclubs. We're very disciplined people, but
I'd say you could tell me stories. I'd say you could tell me a few stories.
So I suppose, Austin, how important is it to kind of reach out to your teammates, your friends, your family, anyone at all, pick up the phone and get talking to us? Because at the end of the day, we are locked away.
Oh, yeah, no, listen, I think it's the thing that people probably miss most is those connections and building strong and deep connections, how important that is to our human psyche, in particular our mental health. And I suppose we're primal in our nature in terms of, I suppose if you go back to the beginnings of societies and that idea of meeting around the campfire and sharing stories and conversations and that still people need that. And I think people very much miss that at the moment. And like there's, great deep conversations are brilliant in terms of that. I often say that emotional transfer of energy between people, and it lights people up. So you don't get that from you won't get that from inanimate objects or, something you purchase or so on. So humans are great like that because we have the ability to lift each other and that transfer of energy. And that's the piece I think people are really missing at the moment. So it's hugely important. Look at them, obviously involved with a number of teams and that, and that's a key piece on the agenda at the moment, is in terms of strengthening those connections and those emotional cords between people, and putting our arms around our people and really looking after each other. It's so important at the moment.
Yeah, super. I agree with all that. And I suppose we can kind of get on to the stuff we know, the football end of things. And you represented the Mayo from 2003 to 2011, and you've done a stint with the Wicklow footballers from 2012 to 2014. Austin, and I suppose remarking on the Mayo football over the years, what's that saying? You're always the brides, but never the bridesmaid, or whatever that saying is when you get to an All-Ireland final, and you're just so close over the years. But I suppose breaking on to the Mayo panel, Austin, and you remarked to me you're involved in 2001, but you made the official breakthrough in 2003. But how did you find it all breaking on, Austin?
Yeah, I suppose, my transition was, I suppose, like any youngster, was mad for road, mad to get a jersey, had the ambition, had probably invested a good bit in myself before that to get myself physically ready and sort of, I suppose, mentally ready at the time. I had a stint earlier in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I probably wasn't mentally ready for it at the time. I was going into a pretty seasoned team, got in a couple of league games, done okay, but tailed off towards the end of the year. So released back out to club, really. So I suppose had to reflect. And came back and was fortunate enough to be given another chance, I suppose, under John Mahan, and it kind of just took off from there. Then in terms of, I suppose, the lead into 04, the league, and on then. So inter-county dressing rooms and the whole, I suppose, entity of inter-county can be a tough place to be, particularly when you're coming in young. But was lucky, that I came on board at that time then with some really, really great people. When you think about the James Nallans, the Kieran McDonalds, the Kevin O'Neills, the Mortimers, Davy Heaney, all these guys, I have great memories from it,
Yeah, definitely. Geez, you're after remarking some unbelievable footballers there, Austin. And I suppose them early years, pushing on from 03, and I suppose it was a seriously competitive team. As you were remarking on some unbelievable players there to break onto that. So, as I always kind of say to the former players, what was it like to play with the Mortimers, the Kieran McDonalds? I'm always saying it, you'll always improve by playing with lads like that, Austin.
Yeah, no, look, there was never a training session that you didn't sharpen, I suppose, your saw in terms of when you were talking with these guys. And I suppose it was a forging process in a lot of ways as well. We had some really, really tough defenders there as well, like Gary Ruin and these guys that would be literally hopping off you. So it was a brilliant environment, but I suppose it's an environment that was an awful lot different as to it is now in terms of the way we set ourselves up and the way we approach things. We had an awful lot of, I suppose, for want of a better word, sort of flamboyance and flair and a lot of individuality within that team. Whereas now, in terms of the way the game has gone, it's a lot more kind of collective, huge emphasis on process and game plan and that. And we played an awful lot, not that we didn't have a certain shape or so on, but we played an awful lot off the cuff. We're very expansive, and maybe that was to our detriment down the line, but we certainly enjoyed it. We had a great bond between us, and it was a really, really exciting time around Mayo then in terms of reaching those two All-Ireland finals. Obviously, we didn't get across the line. And we had to reflect on that and take that on board when it didn't happen as well.
Yeah, and I suppose in 2004 you reached the Holy Grail, and I think it was against a very good Kerry team. And I've talked to Conor Mortimer numerous times about it, and unfortunately he's probably came up against probably the greatest team of that kind of modern era, the early noughties, Austin. And so it was like we can even touch on 2004. What was it like kind of come up against that juggernaut, but the experience in All-Ireland final day, obviously your first one.
Yeah, no, obviously, yeah, Kerry were absolutely primed at that stage. They had incredible players, and they were probably a little bit far ahead of the game where we are in terms of conditioning, and I suppose the work that they were doing under Pat Flanagan at the time in terms of particularly leg strength and how explosive they were that day, when we met them. So, but also they were littered with some of the greatest names in Gaelic football when you think of them there in terms of Paul Galvin, Mahoney, Donaghy, Gooch, to just Shemi Moyne, and all of these guys, they were just absolutely ferocious competitors. And they literally just done a number on us. We weren't at that level in terms of, I suppose there were things we could have done to help ourselves better at the time. But, I suppose the build up to the All-Ireland final is always a special thing. I remember the razzmatazz around it. When you look back now, you probably think, God, Jesus, it was crazy actually in terms of maybe what we were pulled and dragged into. But that again, I suppose, is that little bit of naivety or naivety around that in terms of that maybe we could have managed things a little bit better and so on. But I mean, it was just an emotional roller coaster in those couple of weeks coming into an All-Ireland final in terms of the fanfare that's around things, press nights. It's a special time, and I suppose from looking back now, you'd say to yourself, maybe we as a player and I suppose as a coach now, you're thinking you're always looking to protect players and manage that maybe a little bit better as well. So but no, great memories still.
Yeah, and I suppose in 2004 you came up against Fermanagh, I think was in the semi-final, Austin. Yeah, so that was obviously a very good Fermanagh team as well. But do you kind of when you, I suppose, geez, it's what 17 years ago now, I suppose, but the memory's sharp for it. But do you feel like that kind of was, I know that was a good Fermanagh team, but at the end of the day, Fermanagh were never really dining at the top table and still really aren't. Do you think that was good preparation for that Kerry game, or do you feel you could have fancied the game against Tyrone, or maybe to kind of give yourself a better chance, or what was the verdict and all that?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one. It's a great question. I think actually, when you look back in terms of what that Fermanagh team done that time to come from where they came, and the football that they played, and the fitness levels they had were incredible, and they really put us through the pin of our collar, And I've looked back at those games again, and like the players they had, these guys, the James Sherrys, the Marty McGraths, the Littles, these guys, they played some incredible football. Lee McBarn, another major pillar in that as well. They played some incredible football, so they really did test us. And I think, like you could say, maybe if it was a Tyrone we played or a Dublin or so on, that would be better. But I don't know. I think they really ran us hard, and you have to give them credit for what they done, and in terms of where they brought their game to that year.
Yeah, definitely. Very good Vermont team as well, in fairness. But I suppose we can touch on 2006 as well. He's got back to the Holy Grail, and we'll never forget the semi-final against Dublin. I think it was the Hillgate and everything that went with that. And I suppose a word on that, Austin, and the madness to that in Croke Park that day.
Yeah, no, that was just absolutely off the charts. That still waits with me. It's in my system. I can remember I can still even see it, and feel it, the energy that was around in Croke Park there in terms of the hill, the whole razzmatazz, balls flying around the place, like blue jerseys crashing into green and red, the bit that you had between obviously Pillar and John Morrison, and there was loads of scalps being thrown left, right and centre in other areas as well that probably was never picked up on by the cameras as well. So it was just absolutely frenetic, you'd say, and I suppose as the game unfolded, then it was just an absolutely unbelievable, I suppose, roller coaster from start to finish, really.
Yeah, and looking back, and I think I watched it during a couple of months ago, and it was just an outrageous game of football. I think Kieran McDonald had the best game of his life that day. And I suppose what was it like that day, even kind of play in it? And I know obviously he's probably got the upper hand for doing that. Kieran Whelan openly admitted, saying that would probably was the game changer. Warming up in front of Hill 16, and Kieran McDonald's class at the end, Austin, a very tight game. Just an incredible. When football was good, I suppose, Austin.
Yeah. No, it was incredible, and like you alluded to there, I think Kieran Mack, what he done that day and some of the scores he kicked, and that one at the death, a lot of people talk, and I've looked back over it a lot of times, a lot of people would talk about the actual kick at the end, but if you see where he gathered possession at the start of that move, and you track it all the way, I think it was David Henry was actually tracking him sort of parallel to his shoulder all the way, and at the last minute, David Henry bit in and left him. So when the ball went to Kevin O'Neill, he was actually free and it was offloaded to him. So you go back and you talk again, I suppose, maybe with your coach and I, or your coach and hat on, you're thinking how small, margins make things in terms of Henry just biting in and going to sort of Kevin O'Neill and left McD wide. And he just, it was an incredible finish at the apex of the game when, I suppose the temperature was at its highest and the place was a cacophony of sound as well and energy. To have the poise and I suppose the mental strength and the physiological strength to still be going at that level, late on in the game. So obviously an incredible athlete, an incredible footballer, and he's left, I suppose, an unbelievable legacy of scores and performances throughout his career as well.
And the point he got in the first half outside the foot on the, I think it was at the Cusick stand side of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really have many words more often,
Yeah, no, that was an incredible score in terms of when again, it was Ala sort of Mars Fitzgerald obviously from the opposite side, but just the I suppose the technical ability, number one, the execution of it, number two, but then the actual sort of mental strength to take it on as well, or the mindset to go for it, and that I suppose that goes back to what I said at the start, that within that team there was a lot of individual flamboyance and a lot of creativity. And he was, I suppose, the epitome of all of that in terms of the audacity to step up and do that. Just a real, I suppose, or the evidence certainly of a high performer, a guy that could do it when the temperature is at its highest.
Yeah, definitely, without a doubt. And pushing on to the final, it was the Kingdom again, and I suppose if you're looking back in 2004 final, you're kind of trying to learn from stuff. And what was the kind of mindset going into that game, Austin? Do you feel going into that game? Do you feel just before throw in, right? We have their number. The plan is there. We was kind of amazed by how well they actually turned out and played.
Yeah, look, we were under no illusion. We knew, like, I remember going back, like, again, that we had talked through various scenarios and different things that we were going to do and so on. But like, we were under no illusion. We knew that it was obviously Kerry again, and we knew that, you know, they were still firing. They still had their big guns and that, and like, they really did cut loose again when you think about it in terms of what they'd done. And just like some of their players were actually had gone to another level again when you think about it. When you think of the, you know, the Declan O'Sullivans or the Donaghys and these guys, Paul Gal, you know, again, like, they were levels, you know, that these guys were moving up, and they really done a number on us.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah,
yeah, like, it was just
credit.
like,
An incredible team.
Yeah, an incredible team, incredible players, and everything that went with it. And I suppose, and then the years kind of followed after that, Austin. Like, you're pushing on to 07 or 08, and you just didn't get to a final before you maybe you finish up playing for the Mayo footballers. But I suppose, like, at the latter end, like, what kind of happened after maybe 06? Like, you maybe kind of fell off the boil a bit, or maybe some players dropped off the panel. But what was that? Maybe until you were finished up at Mayo in 2011. Like, what happened up until them years, Austin? Do you feel? Yeah, like, what do you feel, a drop in standard, players leaving, or what was the story, Austin?
Yeah, I think actually, I suppose, you know, you kind of, with anything, it kind of comes in waves, and you had that sort of period of probably between 03 and 06 where you had a lot of guys, you know, were reaching a certain level, and you know, I suppose, you know, the experiences of 2 All-Ireland finals, things began to maybe wane a little bit. There was a transition period, definitely, even though, you know, I hate using that word, of transition, but new talent started coming in, see new manager, new stamp, trying to put things together and trying to maybe lay the foundations for the future as well. And yeah, definitely. So we obviously got caught, you know, in the next couple of years there. So, like, definitely, like, in terms of Jono came in and he started putting different bits of structures in place and bringing in new guys, and like, a lot of those guys that Jono brought in has gone, you know, they were the platform again for, I suppose, for a lot of James's teams now, and some of those young guys that came in as well. So you know, we were definitely in a period there where it was changed. There was a lot of transition. Yeah, it was a change point, a big change point.
Yeah, and I suppose even obviously is it fierce, really, really good success in the Connacht campaign over the years. And I suppose when you were playing in them years, like, and it was a great, like, I always remember them games against Galway, always so tight, and it always went down to the last 5 or 10 minutes. And I suppose, what was it like kind of playing the Connacht Championship over the years, Austin, and witness and even playing some of them massive games?
Yeah, no, great. Like, lucky to win 3 of them. So, like, great games. Like, I mean, you were always waiting, I suppose, for Galway. That was always a special one. Not that you didn't give the necessary, I suppose, time and attention to the others as well in terms of Roscommon. We bet Roscommon in one Connacht final in McHale Park. That was a massive one as well in terms of us developing as a team. And the Galway then was always on the radar, you know, I suppose, across the border. And that your biggest rivals. So they were phenomenal experiences, particularly, I suppose, when I came into the panel, you know, at the start, you know, to experience that, to win a couple of Connacht titles. And there was, you know, obviously the Mayo following, and I suppose the atmosphere that they create around the place and what they bring with them as well. It just makes it really carnival, and like, great days in Castlebar or Salthill or Tuam. You know, the old Tuam Stadium was a special place as well, even in terms to go, you know, as well during Connacht Championship games.
Yeah, and I suppose, kind of, when you did get all the momentum from winning all them Connacht Championships over the years, Austin, and all the momentum that brought witches, did you firmly kind of believe, obviously yourself, the teams, the whole management team, everyone, did you kind of feel like it was a siege mentality? God, we're after winning Connacht, we can really go and win an All Ireland this year, and nothing's going to stop us?
I think we probably did, yeah. And I think every team, you know, once you come through your provincials, you know, you're locked and loaded, and you think, yeah, we're ready, and you have to, I suppose, front up, and belief is you know, obviously is a huge part of it. But I think within that squad, we always believed that we had definitely the ability and the talents to push it right to the last sort of, you know, week in September and so on. I think there was an undercurrent there, definitely. You don't like that those teams were made up of a lot of really big characters and leaders. So that was there, definitely, you know. And there was the older guys certainly were, you know, on you know, their North Star was definitely to be getting to All Irelands and that. And I remember, like, distinctly, you know, some of the older guys saying, like, it wasn't about winning a Connacht, it was about pushing on and that. So they were trying to pull things on in terms of winning All Ireland, you know.
Yeah, and did you find the kind of Connacht Championship over the years to kind of be like, obviously a fantastic starting block for the All Ireland series, but like, did you kind of feel like, oh sure, look, we get over Connacht, we not really care about it and just kind of move on to the All-Ireland? Like, did you ever kind of just say, right, sure, the Connacht, sure, geez, we'll to hell with that, let's full preparation for the All-Ireland, or what was the mindset?
No, God, I we never, not at the time, particularly not because Galway were so strong. They such fantastic players. Obviously Roscommon, you could not take any of these guys for granted. On any given day they could actually take your scalp. So we were very micro focused in terms of going back. I remember the detail, I suppose, and around the prep we put into to getting things right for each of those. So definitely not in terms of that. I suppose, as we said, the Connacht final was a very, very special medal. So you wanted to rack as many of them up as you could. So you certainly never took them for granted. Definitely not. You just couldn't with the caliber. There was players that were there, obviously, in Galway, and as I said, Roscommon and Sligo as well at the time. If they could easily catch you.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose, obviously, you being a forward as well, and I suppose the competition on the Mayo panel was obviously very strong, and you had Mortimer and Trevor Mortimer and Kieran McDonald and Alan Dillon and everything that kind of went with it, Austin. How did you find kind of trying to, I suppose, get into that kind of elite forward line? Like, did you find a struggle over the years, or when you did make the break on at 15, we were like, boom, work done, I'm on?
No, never, because it was, as you just alluded there, there was such quality and such caliber around the place. And there was other great, like we said, we had Brian Maloney there as well. You had even Jerry Brady coming in. So we were stacked. We probably had 10 or 11 that could have start, forwards that could start any given day. You had pivoted into like JMac, and you had other guys coming in like Kevin O'Neill and that. So we had a rich arsenal of forwards at the time. So it was always, you could never, even every training session, I remember thinking you could never take your foot off the gas. You were literally always pushing, either try to get in, or if you're in, to try and stay in. So I suppose, as I said there, it was a forging process and it was, it could be mentally draining but that's, I suppose, high performance sport, or particularly at that time, that every training session, you have to be locked and loaded and ready to perform, that you could never sit on your laurels there, particularly because there was always someone like a bloodhound literally trying to sniffing to get in or get a chance and so on. So yeah, and that's, I suppose, that's ultimately what I suppose makes you a better player.
Yeah, I suppose, what were the training sessions, the AVB games like, Austin, over the years? Well, we hear of the Dublin training sessions just being absolutely relentless, but when Mayo were going good in them years, and still are, of course, but what were they like, Austin? Just dog eat dog?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, there used to be unbelievable scalping and pegging going on through it, but my recollection of them from now is, even I think back in there was some great internal games being played in those A and Bs, and obviously the Saturday before and so on. Some cracking football being played. Again, I suppose at the heart of it, remember even watching a display one night, a Tuesday night in McHale Park. I think it was the best I ever seen Kieran McDonald over 60 minutes. And that's it was just outrageous stuff. Had there been a camera there, I remember at the time thinking it was just absolutely. I actually could, you just had to stand back. It was almost Cantonesque, some of the stuff. Vividly remember, it was a warm, summer evening I think, or a warm Saturday evening in Castlebar, and it was just literally, but they were great. Those A and B games were brilliant at the time, in terms of, I suppose, preparing for the Cut and Thrust Championship.
Yeah.
Following week.
Yeah, definitely, without a doubt. And I suppose the 2011 came knocking, Austin. I suppose, what was the culminating factor with you kind of packing the bags of Mayo, or what was the final nail in the coffin?
Yeah, I guess I was living in Dublin at the time. I remember I was living in Dublin. I was teaching at the time, and I suppose just travel and father time coming. I had been in on the tail end of kind of the first kind of iteration of James Horden when he came, and just remember he was introducing a huge amount of new blood. I was obviously 30 whatever plus, living in Dublin, and it was just I just felt in terms of the travel, because we had it done obviously. I think it was just the attrition as well, and the body broke down. It was picking up of a lot of kind of hamstring stuff, and because at the time there was a number of us in Dublin, and I mean we had done it for a number of years, literally leaving at 4:00 from the Lucan Spa in a bus down to train in Castlebar for 7:30, and grab a quick bite back into the bus up the road again, and you're up again at, you're getting back to Dublin probably at 1 o'clock, into bed 1:30. And I remember I was doing, I think it was I teaching at the time or doing my dip, but you're up again at like 6:30 because, to get yourself prepped and ready. So like that was 3 or 4 years, and that's attritional, like, and I remember just, that's, so all of those factors came into to play, I think.
Yeah, and it's probably a rhetorical question, Austin, but did you enjoy playing for the Mayo footballers? Because we know what the fans can be like. They can be very, very take, and if you aren't giving it back, you kind of hear from them. So, so number one, did you enjoy it? Number two, did you ever find that kind of pressure playing with Mayo? And number three, what was it all like?
Yeah, no, I have to say I really, really did enjoy it. It was a massive opportunity. I suppose it was something that, I pinned maybe when I was 18 or 19. I kind of got an idea that I'd love to have a cut at it, and put in a good bit of work to try and get there. Finally broke in and loved it. Like, I really did love it. Like, in terms of even, just the idea of trying to push yourself to be the best you could be, from that perspective, and investing in yourself physically, I suppose, and mentally. And I loved, like, I obviously, even the profession I'm in now, in terms of being in those environments where people are pushing and they represent in something like a high performance environment. But I absolutely loved it. Yeah. And I suppose, like, there were great times. We had great memories. We did a lot, like, we've obviously earned our blisters as well. We took some bad beatings, but they were all character forming. And, I look back now, and because things evolve and big in terms of like evolution, and you move on, you reflect and you learn. And there's an awful lot of things that I've taken from that now that I've sort of added to my cachet, that has definitely strengthened, I suppose, my own mindset and character as well. But like, great memories. The fans were like unbelievable at the time as well. Like, and it is a special, I know people talk a lot about the Mayo fans and what they bring in that, but they are a special bunch, and they do really, they're sprinters, as we say, in terms of like, they're really hard and fast, and they're up and at it. But no, I fond memories. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I suppose you probably just got the growl for it again, but the Wicklow county team came knocking, and you done a stint with them 2012 to 14, as a reference at the start of the podcast. So where did the Wicklow thing come about, Austin?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one, I suppose. I kind of thought I had really done and dusted with the inter-county stuff, I thought at the time. And I had moved actually I was out in the south side of Dublin, so I was close into St. Pat's in Wicklow there. So I actually moved for a year to St. Pat's in Wicklow, and I was playing with those guys. So we had a great year, actually. Lucky enough, we won a senior championship that year. And I remember just getting a phone call from someone involved with Wicklow and asking me, like, would I be interested in coming in? Miko was there at the time, obviously, to a trial game, and I said, I kind of hadn't thought about it at the stage, and then I kind of thought, well, okay, why not? Like, so I went in, and it just sort of flowed from there. Went really well, really enjoyed it. They had a great bunch of guys again. Obviously the Miko factor was massive in it, in terms of, I kind of thought about and said, God, you only get one opportunity probably in lifetime to experience a man like that, a manager like that. Probably the greatest that the game has ever seen. So it was a really unique experience, and I have to say, like, I've fond memories of that as well, in terms of, I suppose it was an eye-opener for me, going into a different county and seeing the way they operate. And I suppose, again, like, the quality of player that was in Wicklow at the time as well. When you think of Shawnee Furlong, still there, obviously, Leighton Glenn, Stafford, a lot of these guys were brilliant footballers as well. So fond memories again. And again, as I said, I suppose, you take those memories and those learnings with you as well from those times.
Yeah, I suppose, what was the kind of like the feedback, or what was like what were any of your mates? I don't know, did anyone kind of give you a bit of slagging over it, or was it just kind of, could they understand the movie, or the movie even, because obviously to go from Mayo to Wicklow, it's kind of like chalk and cheese, like, and what was the whole reaction like at the time?
Yeah, no, actually, it was probably strange. It definitely rose a few eyebrows, I'd say, at the time, and people were probably thinking, what is this guy at? But I suppose I've always looked to challenge myself in different ways, and I wouldn't be, I suppose, someone that would always flow with the conventional or the populace. I would be very, very, I suppose, strong-willed and strong-minded myself in terms of what I'd like to do, and in terms of, I always do like challenge. I like change. I like innovation. I like trying new things in terms of that. And it did raise a few eyebrows at the time, but like, I'm all about challenging myself, whatever given point you are at in your life and wherever your levels are. to challenge yourself. And I was at a particular time or a particular space, and I got an opportunity, and I seen it, that is actually going to be a challenge. It's going to be a learning. And as I said to you, I suppose the Miko factor was a bit, he was the bit of, I suppose, stardust there that made it a little bit more attractive in that. So yeah, definitely loads of slagging, loads of banter about it at home and that. But I have to say, I learned a lot in it. I definitely did. And I would think now, I even think back in terms of some of the experiences and Division 4 football, it's a unique type of animal, the basement division. Like there's a lot happens in it in terms of the games and the officiating, what I would have witnessed in that. So it definitely was a different experience, but one I'll treasure, definitely, and I've taken a lot from.
Yeah, definitely the 50 grand you got for going as well. That was a big.
That helps. Yeah, that softened the blow, obviously. I only wish. Oh God. Huh?
And of course, guys, this podcast
50 years of abuse.
And of course, guys, this podcast is sponsored by OrgaRetro.com. Check the website for all your retro gear needs. And you were referencing Division 4, Austin, and obviously Division 1 Mayo always were really. Like, what was that kind of like playing over the years? Obviously, you were saying seeing dubious decisions, and that standard of play as well, Austin, because like I'm presuming, when you were playing against teams like that, you were probably cut above the rest against them players, really.
Well, I wouldn't say that. It's just it was a funny one, because I remember my first game. I think we played. We had Longford, we had Roscommon, so there were quality teams, and there was a lot of quality there. I think sometimes, obviously, the division itself, like even I'd done a bit of work earlier or last year with Wexford down in Division 4 as well. And like there's a lot of quality football to be played, and sometimes the reporting on it doesn't get the highlights, but there's a lot of what would I say, there's a lot of, not maverick, but there's a lot of innovation, and there's a lot of people try an awful lot of different things in Division 4. Players even will go for stuff that maybe in top other tiers don't, because it might be more pressure and so on. So it definitely is a unique entity in itself. But like an awful lot of good football played down there, and I don't think maybe sometimes it gets the credit it deserves, or sometimes it doesn't get the spotlight it deserves in terms of the reporting or the exposure. But like there's, to see guys, they put in the same work, more so I would say, even some of the things I've experienced in terms of, when you're second best, you have to probably put in a little bit more and so on. But it's the same levels of effort, in terms of what guys try and do.
Yeah, and I suppose like I've kind of touched in recent weeks, like were you kind of like when you were playing for Wicklow, and like obviously the Sunday games always on the Sunday, like were you ever kind of let down by the exposure that the Wicklow footballers were getting? Like I know Mayo, Kerry Dublin always get the best media coverage, but were you kind of a bit flummoxed over the years by, Jesus Christ, surely we deserve a couple of minutes rather than 1 minute? Oh Jesus, Wicklow were playing, Leitrim in the league there, here's a 30 seconds of coverage.
Yeah, no, look, obviously, and I know the way the mechanics of those things work in terms of like the blue ribbon event is the Division 1 and so on. But I do think it rankers obviously a lot, Division 4 players in terms of maybe they don't get that exposure. And it's something that I think that, in terms of equity and shining the light a little bit more on it, because ultimately, like, we need our Division 4s and 3s, and we need to start cultivating them and developing them, particularly for the weaker counties and that. And that's one way of doing it as well. Obviously, the other ones is in terms of the investment that needs to go into these weaker counties in terms of coaching, and I suppose giving them the commercial game plan and the high performance plan to help them develop as well. But there are other things that can be done in terms of that as well, to create equity and sort of parity of esteem across that they do get a little bit more exposure, and that they're seen a little bit more in terms of rewards for their efforts, I would say, definitely.
Yeah, I suppose obviously you strike me as the kind of person who kind of like to kind of set out goals and achieve stuff. So when you did go down to Wicklow, was there anything personally you kind of wanted to achieve yourself, or maybe get them out of Division 4 or whatever division they were in at the time? Yeah,
I remember. Yeah, certainly. Like even when I joined Pats as a club, like, it was absolutely my first thing. I really wanted to win a county title with them, and we were lucky we done that. In terms of Wicklow, certainly, like I did. One of my primary things was I wanted to try and help to get up out of Division 4. We were lucky we actually went on and done that. We beat was it Fermanagh in the final in Division 4, and that was a big achievement at the time. But yeah, certainly I would always set targets for myself personally, and then as part of a team. And you're always looking to try and, leave a positive legacy behind, that you came in and you contributed and that you showed up and you brought all of yourself to it, and you gave everything of yourself to it, and you left a positive, I suppose, imprint or fingerprint on whatever you done in terms of that.
Yeah, I suppose we can touch on the commitment. Obviously, the county football is bringing to everyone's lives, and even your life when you were playing, Austin. But like, what did you kind of make of it, playing for Mayo and Wicklow? Like, did you enjoy the commitment of it all, or like, obviously you strike me as a fella who probably did love it because your enthusiasm is just obviously glaringly obvious. So, did you enjoy the 5 or 6 nights a week that it brought your life, Austin?
I did. I did. I think going back even when I was younger. Now, I need to nuance that, but there's a lot of stuff that comes with that. But I think I did, from the perspective of that. Like, I always loved training. I always loved being in shape. I always loved sort of pushing boundaries and trying to be, I suppose, physically the best I could be in that. And when you're young and you look in and and you see a Mayo team, or you see Mayo players, and you think, God, I that's something that I'd really like to go and get after. And you always, that stays with you in terms of, I suppose it becomes part of what you say, your purpose, so that really was in terms of part of my purpose. There are elements of it, obviously, that were tricky in terms of, like, there's probably the biggest thing I found is, it's just the psychological burn that it can be to in terms of the length of the season, and the consistency of it, and keeping going. And particularly, I was based in Dublin for a good bit of it, so it was really attritional, up and down. And the burn that is, and maybe at the time, like, you're looking back, obviously players now have a lot more supports around them in terms of maybe the mental side of the game, and some of the chat, and even having that idea of having a mentor to chat to and so on, to try and help you, develop in that. I suppose I came from a smaller club, and there hadn't been too many, I didn't really have anyone to turn to that had been through, that had been playing senior. So I think that was, when I look back now, that definitely was a void, that I think if I had, would have probably helped me a huge amount if I had a really good solid mentor, or someone had broke ground from my club in that sphere that I could have turned to and so on. So you're trying to just literally figure everything out yourself, where you're the pecking order of a dressing room, trying to manage that bit, and you're young, you're developing emotionally and mentally as well, and where you sit. So that can be a tough element, and it's something I'm always aware of now, even when I'm coaching, in terms of even younger guys and girls when they come into setups, to be able to meet them where they're at and understand them. It's a huge part of it, I think. It can be very, very attritional. It can be emotionally and psychologically wearing in there as well. So those are the bits, I suppose. But overall, I'd have to say, really, really positive experience. Learned huge amount.
Yeah, definitely. And it's the age-old question at this stage, Austin. Obviously, you've been watching on for so many years at this stage, and Mayo got to the final in 2020 and just couldn't get over the line again. And obviously, your role as a high-performance coach in your business hexagon performance, which we'll be touching on in a few minutes. But what you feel has been the problem over the years, Austin? Obviously, me and you will never get the answers to it or find out the answers, but what you feel can be done, what you feel has went wrong, and what's going on, do you think, with Mayo football trying to win the Sam Maguire?
Yeah, look, it's a big question. I think we have made massive progress in terms of an awful lot of areas, in terms of what we're developing, particularly even in our academy system, in terms of the structures that we're putting in place to sort of bring talent through. I think that's a major part, and I think that will reap benefits down the line, in terms of, even we've seen what came through this year in terms of Ryan O'Donoghue, Tommy Conroy, Oisin Mullen, and these guys. So, and in terms of what James has done at the moment, he's brought a phenomenal amount of young lads through, and he's developing them. So that looks well. In terms of losing finals, when you lose, you just have to accept that you weren't good enough. You were second best on the day, and you have to go back and rake through the embers, and you have to find the reasons why. I suppose the things that we would ask ourselves, maybe, are we good enough at raking through the embers and the ashes and finding the reasons why, and then rectifying them, and putting something in place so these things don't happen again. So those are things, I suppose, questions we have to ask ourselves, because if you do keep coming up short, as we have done, and I do believe we will get there, but it's a chasing experience, and I suppose when you think of the current group of guys that are there at the moment, what they've given, the levels that these guys have given in terms of effort, in terms of emotion, in terms of energy. It's been absolutely, phenomenal. And every one of them can walk away with their held high. Have we come in a vein riding shotgun to an extraordinary team that is Dublin as well? You have to factor in terms of the resources they have, in terms of what they've put together, how they were managed, in terms of the culture they created. So they're probably an iteration or two ahead of where definitely we were in terms of that. So there's an awful lot of things that need to go right. There's an awful lot of things that have to be in place in terms of, culture, game plan, setup, personnel. Like, all of these things have to be nailed on. And there's, minute percentages it comes down to, and that's where we've been caught in terms of these games, losing All Ireland finals by a point here and there. So there's an awful lot in that question. I think I circumnavigated around giving you a really good answer, did
I? You did. Yeah, very good. But even at that though, do you feel like with the retirements Mayo have had in the last couple of months as well, Austin, do you feel that'll have a big impact on the squad? Because obviously you need experience to win cups, you need experience to win titles, as you well know, over the years. Do you feel it will have a big impact on Mayo football? And them boys retiring, they're not, you wouldn't need them around the place.
Oh yeah, no, look, without a doubt, and it goes back to as well, you're talking about key guys, which I would call, they're cultural architects within a dressing room, within that community. So when you lose that, not alone do you lose the football capability and the technical expertise, but also you lose guys that know that know every iteration of the game plan down to a T, and that they're enforcers on the field as well. So yeah, you lose the personnel, but you lose all that sort of IP or football IP that goes out the door with them as well, and all that leadership. So definitely, that's definitely it's taken off the table. So I suppose the question then you got to ask yourself is, how do you replace that? And do you have to change your setup or your environment and start, taking out the spanner and start twisting and pulling the levers in other directions to try and fill those gaps? And in terms of fast tracking, talent to step up. And that's the challenge that's probably for Mayo this year now is those guys that burst onto the scene last year, have they seen enough of these guys? Do they understand what's expected of them in terms of protecting and building and strengthening that culture and being able to step up on the big days again now? So those are the things, the challenges that face, I suppose, management teams when you do lose players like that. And it's one that's going to take a lot of work. But it's about time, and it's about doing the right things, and there's an onus on the players as well, obviously, to step up and lead and plug those gaps and holes.
Yeah. And fingers crossed, I think from a Mayo point of view, it does happen for you soon, because it'd just be great release for the county, I think. And obviously we can touch on Dub's dominance as well, and it is the main thing going on at the minute, and how to stop it and ways to look at it. But obviously you're into your high performance and everything goes with it, Austin. But what's impressing you most about this Dublin juggernaut, I suppose, and when will it stop?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, I'd be fascinated by it. I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't, in terms of, I suppose, my own role as a performance coach, but looking in at it. But for me, culture is a huge part of it. And I just think in terms of what they've done there, they've really embedded this a really bulletproof culture into the DNA of Dublin now, or into their setup, and they have created an environment that's helping players to flourish, and guys, there's that kind of scaffolding is put around guys, and there's a certain level of expectation in there when you come in, and there's a certain way of doing things, and they've built a really unique culture. And they're, if you meet any of the Dublin guys, and I have been lucky enough to come across some of them even through different bits of coaching, maybe with Coola for a year or two, they're really solid citizens, in terms of the way they go about their business, in terms of the way they handle themselves. Yeah. and that's all, I suppose, a snapshot of the greater sort of blue project that is. And don't underestimate, in terms of the characters that they've brought in to spearhead this thing, the John Costellos, the great managers, the Pat Gilroys, and obviously the man they had at the helm there for 5 in a row, and now Desi coming again. So it's a lot about personnel and getting the right people with the right, as I say, intellectual horsepower to build this thing and maintain it. So those are key parts and components of building an environment.
Jim Gavin's going to hate you for not remembering his name there, by the way. Jeez, that's going to be the end of this podcast if he gets word of it.
Yeah, that's the end of it. What an incredible job he's done.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with all that, Austin. Like, they're absolute gentlemen on the field. They carry themselves so well, and ultimate professionals. And I suppose it kind of leads me on to my next question. You've seen it in Wicklow, Leitrim, or like obviously Wicklow firsthand, and then the likes of Leitrim and Carlow. They're probably the weaker, like the known weaker counties. So, what kind of hope does that kind of give them lads at the start of the year when they see? I sound like a broken record, but it's something that needs to be talked about. When you see Paul Mannion, Michael Darmacall the year before, Jeremy Connolly stepping away, probably sick of winning, probably fed up with nearly at this stage, Austin. What chance does that give them boys, the likes of the Wicklows and Leitrim's of this world, starting off at the start of the year, Austin?
Yeah, no, look, it's a chasing question, and like, you have to. The only thing I would say, you have to give massive credit and kudos to guys that are in weaker counties that rock up year after year, and really, and it's all about the badge and it's all about the jersey and it's all about representing. Because that's a tough slog in terms of when you're in those weaker counties and so on, and you're looking around and you're thinking, like, does anybody really actually care in terms of the game? Is it all about that sort of top level and so on? So, like, that's the first thing I would say. Massive credit needs to go to those guys. Those are the lifeblood. Those are the guys that are keeping the games going in their clubs and in their parishes and so on in smaller counties, and that, like, sort of props up everything else up. So that's the first thing. But I think there is an onus on the GAA and the wider sort of, I suppose, hierarchies to really go after and look at this. And I've said this on numerous platforms before about reaching out to these guys and giving them the commercial game plan, giving them the high performance plan, and really helping them to try and build and develop structures and infrastructures that'll support them, and that'll develop things on, even in terms of, like, academy systems, or even if it's a situation where you need, maybe, I know this thing of this high performance coaches going in different counties and so on, but could there be one shared between sort of weaker counties, and it could be coming from Croke Park? I just think that there needs to be more done in terms of that to try and build that and to encourage them, because it is a problem, and in terms of numbers will wane if guys don't start seeing it.
Yeah, and do you feel, Austin, at this stage, like, is the gap closing at all? Like, are the likes of Mayo, Kerry, Tyrone, Donegal coming up? Like, is the gap closing at all, Austin, do you feel? Or, like, are we just going to be looking at this for the next 5 or 6 years?
In terms of Dublin?
Dublin's dominance, like, is the gap closing at all, do you feel?
Yeah, no, I think it is. I think it is. Maybe even looking at last year's All-Ireland final, I thought Dublin, and I think they probably said themselves, I don't think they reached the levels that they had prior. Now, I know they came through, like everybody else, lockdown and all of those things, but I don't think they're as far away and ahead as people might think. So I think there is hope there, definitely, in terms of this year coming again. It's probably, when you look away from those top 4 or 5 to the other level of it, that's where the chasm is opening maybe a little bit more. That's where we need to be more focused on in terms of resources and giving people what they need.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with all that. And so we can touch on your business, Hexagon Performance. You're the high performance coach at that, Austin, and obviously you worked with the great Enda McNulty as well before all this, Austin. So suppose, like, what all does it entail, and when did you get the ball rolling with it?
Yeah, so got the ball rolling probably last August. So decided, obviously always had an ambition to do something for myself. So I suppose over the years, I had obviously worked with Enda and the guys at McNulty's for 4 years. I was as the high performance lead there. So I had an incredible, obviously, journey and time and experiences there. And just felt again like that, I suppose, going back to the earlier what I said, I love a challenge. I love to test myself, and in terms of doing something that I felt that I could, invest my time and energy in, and I'm big about purpose in terms of, I suppose, when my feet hit the ground in the morning, whatever I'm doing, I'm going after it for myself in terms of that. And I suppose it's an area I'm hugely passionate about in terms of performance coaching. So set up the business around late August, early September. and have been really lucky in terms of the way that it's shown, signs of growth. So really work across, a lot of different sports organizations, and also global corporates and SMEs as well, particularly around the areas of high performance coaching, culture building, and also obviously health and well-being is a major part of that as well. So areas that obviously have been really to the fore, I suppose, with the challenges that's been posed by COVID at the moment. So have been lucky to see some growth in those areas, but huge obviously challenges out there as well with it, to grow a business and to try and build it during these times.
Yeah, and I suppose obviously in launching during COVID, like, how have you found it during the kind of COVID, obviously with high performance? Like, has business been a booming for you, or how have you find the whole acclimatizing to the whole thing, I suppose?
Yeah, no, it's been really challenging, I have to say, in terms of trying to shift an awful lot more stuff online, and the digitization of a business is always tough and challenging. And I suppose that we're all kind of, as I said at the outset, looking around corners and wondering what's coming next. And obviously there was a kind of a transition period there where you're trying to move everything online. So you had the advent of the Zoom and so on. So we've been lucky, in terms of the companies that I have been aligned with, and obviously the sporting organizations and teams that I'm aligned with, that we have managed to do it successfully and managed to maintain some growth and keep our clients resourced. So it's great, and really looking forward to the opportunity, I suppose, of everything opening back up again and getting back into industries and that, and having more one-to-ones with people.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose when you were playing for Mayo and Wicklow, Austin, and getting to All-Ireland finals over the years, was this something you always wanted to do and chase after?
Yeah. I think it's always in the back of my mind, in terms of even going back to, I suppose, when I was younger, I was always fascinated around the idea of performance. And I suppose the more I seen and the more I was involved from a sporting context, it really lit up my imagination, in terms of, I suppose, at the essence of what I do is I just, in terms of people maximizing their potential, or helping people develop to be the best versions of themselves, and to chase after, I suppose, to chase after high performance, really. And I'm just, I suppose, I'm someone that's addicted to those type of environments where you're surrounded by people that are pushing the needle to do something really special. So that's probably led me down that path, in terms of where I've sort of gained some qualifications, and my experiences, obviously, with 4 years with McNulty Performance was a brilliant sort of breeding ground as well, in terms of exposure to different methodologies and different practices, and so that just lit me up more again as well, and really wanted me to take it on.
Yeah, and obviously you referenced working with McNulty's Ed McNulty, and he was part of great Armagh teams, and he was just a serious leader, and probably McGeaney vintage there, really. Austin, what was it like to kind of work with the great Ed McNulty, and he'd make you, by listening to me, he'd make you go out and run hills.
Yeah, Inda's an incredible guy in terms of the business he has built, in terms of what he's done across different platforms and with different organizations. An outstanding coach. Again, a guy that's just, I suppose, within his field, he's one of the top guys in terms of a performance coach and performance psychology. So, have nothing but admiration for him, and had great times there, and still obviously involved with the business in terms of as an associate and that. So it's, great, learned loads, brilliant mentor, super fella.
Yeah, absolutely. And anyone interested in Austin's business, Hexcom Performance, check him out, and it's definitely worth looking into. And I suppose, Austin, you had a long and winding career, and when you look back on things, and I suppose, who would have been the best player you played with and against over the years?
Best player played with, I would say, it would be harder to find one better than probably Kieran McDonald, in terms of just what he brought. Best player I played against, I suppose I'm always looking at defenders. And I give a nod to this one, and some people mightn't think of it, but I just didn't think of, he was in college with me, and I had so many battles with him. Was Johnny McCarthy from Limerick is a guy that stands out to me. A real dog of war. There was numerous great players, but he's one that stands out. Had a couple of spins on obviously Graham Canty, even in National League and that, and just knew he was an absolute ferocious competitor. But yeah, there's a lot of great ones, but guys like that definitely stand out.
Yeah, and last but not least, Austin, I always ask the former players, but like there's the young Austin O'Malley starting off and trying to make the breakthrough to a county panel. What advice would you give a young gun starting off, Austin?
I think first and foremost is you got to have, a massive ambition and a vision for yourself. Starting out, a really clear, definitive picture of where you want to go, and get that nailed on. And then it's about really getting the brilliant basics in place that you need. And I think, if you can establish early on in terms of what you need to be at your best, would be a great starting point. Because there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of noise around young guys. It's hard to decipher that. And, when you don't know what you need, you kind of think you need everything. So if you can understand early, what do I need to be at the best, to be at my best, and then focus on those and put them in place. And there's, that idea, I said at the outset also, maybe is have a mentor, someone that you can go to and talk to, that maybe has been through it before, and that you can, connect into and really flesh things out, because the physical parts of develop and all that will come, but the mental stuff and the emotional stuff and dealing with all that other stuff, that's a massive part of it, and it's a differentiator for a lot of players and people that go to the top. So those would be my little tuppence worth there to a young guy if he's starting off, to a young Austie.
Young Austin's right. I'll tell you what, I'm inspired by Austin, so if that's anything there. But of course, Austin O'Malley, thanks a million for joining me on the JMac Podcast. Of course, this podcast is sponsored by OrgaRetro.com. Check the website out for all your retro gear needs, and you'll get a Wicklow or a Mayo jersey, and sure, Austin might sign it for you.
Absolutely. Listen, John, thanks a million. Really enjoyed it, and good luck with the podcast. I'm really enjoying everything you're doing, so fair play.
Austin, top man, thanks a million. And obviously check out Austin's website, Hexagon Sports, and he'll get you going. Thanks very much, Austin.
Thanks very much. Take care.